we kind of play through all of the scenarios of what could possibly have happened. We want to know what happened. We want to know that he's okay.
That was Victoria Schwarz talking about her missing father and a case that's quite honestly baffling. Some of the public think that maybe Scott left of his own accord. Others think maybe law enforcement isn't doing such a good job here. Personally, I'm wondering how this man seemingly disappeared from an area that to me looks like there should be cameras everywhere. It's time to turn on the searchlight for Scott Schwarz. Welcome back to BrainScratch Searchlight. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for caring about these cases like I do, as we look into another missing person and one with just some very hard to understand issues and questions. One of the issues I have is this is a video clip that is being reported as the last confirmed or known sighting of Scott. We can see he's heading down the stairs here in the entryway to his apartment complex. And he's seemingly heading for the exit, kind of heading to the front door. Doesn't seem like there's too much to question about this, right? Sit tight, because we're going to get to a couple of questions about that footage as well. Butler County Sheriff's Office put out the word on August 14th of 2024. That's almost a week after he actually went missing. They were requesting help. And here we are several months after that. He's still missing, leaving a lot of questions for his family. We want to see if we can help them with all this. He went missing in Liberty Township. That is a suburb of Cincinnati located in Butler County, Ohio. It's one of 13 townships in Butler County. Population about 44,000 as of the 2020 census. It's located on the east central part of the county, just south of the city of Monroe. So we've got a highly populated area. The place where he lives, there's businesses all around. Like literally, there's businesses almost kind of in the same building that he's in. And we can see at least the lobby of the apartment structure has good cameras and good coverage in there. How do we lose sight? How do we lose track of Scott? Let's continue at NamUs learning about the basics of this case. Date of last contact, August 9th, 2024. I believe that's a Friday, and it was in the evening hours. Some reports are saying that that footage was actually from 3:30 in the afternoon, but there's time code that you can see on it, and other news sources are reporting that he was last seen around 8:30 in the evening. I'm leaning to the 8:30 because that's what's kind of matching up with the time code that we're seeing in the footage. Although admittedly, one of my questions about that time code is, like you can see just a little bit of it here, there's no date on it, which to me is a little strange. I don't know if there's another section of the screen where they have the date, like maybe this is just a cropped version of whatever shows up on that screen. Usually when you see a time code like this, it's complete. It actually has the date and the time. So it leaves a little bit of a question for me in terms of, is that the actual time of the sighting, or is that the time for when someone is watching this back? But most news sources are reporting that it was around 8:30 that he was last seen. 60 years old, still 60 years old, Scott Michael Schwarz. Here they're saying that he doesn't have any known nicknames or aliases. We're going to find out there actually is. He is a male standing at 5 feet 9 inches tall, weighing about 190 pounds. And for the circumstances, not a whole lot. Scott Michael Schwarz was last seen Friday, August 9th, around 8:30 p.m. So there's our confirmation on the time. At the Liberty Center on Blake Street. Mr. Schwarz is 60 years old, 5'9", 190 pounds, with gray hair and blue eyes, last known to be wearing a gray CSI t-shirt and dark colored jeans. It's the basic CSI logo, small logo on the front, larger logo in the middle on the back. Blue eyes, gray hair, not a lot of other physical descriptors here. We're not noting any scars, tattoos, anything of that nature. Clothing, gray CSI t-shirt, dark colored jeans, dark gray, I believe is the right color. No information noted for transportation because that's another twist in this case. His car is still in the parking lot at, was found in the parking lot at his apartments. A couple of pictures here, and of course the contact information for law enforcement. So I mentioned an alias. I went looking because I just wanted to find out about his background a little bit on Facebook, and searching for Scott Schwarz actually brought me to this profile for Scott Black, even though it doesn't say Schwarz anywhere on it. I don't know if he renamed it at some point, but this is essentially a pen name for him in terms of being an author of the military thriller Lockdown. So if we jump over to Goodreads, they have a bit of a bio on Scott Black, including a picture of his book here, Lockdown. Scott was born in New Jersey. He attended Middletown North High School, where he played football, and he met his lifelong partner and wife, Deanna. Apparently, they would have just been married for 40 years in July, so about a month before his disappearance. Upon graduation, he joined the United States Navy and served for 8 years. After the Navy, he worked his way through college, earning a Bachelor of Arts degree in natural sciences and mathematics, and he's held various engineering and management positions in several manufacturing companies. Corporate life has offered many opportunities to travel the world, and Scott has visited more than 30 countries. He and Deanna have 2 daughters. In his spare time, Scott has always found creative ways to release his energies. A former singer, musician, and actor, his love of the arts drives a desire to continually engage in creative endeavors. He has walked the boards as a member of the Rhode Island Shakespeare Theater and was once the lead singer / frontman in 2 Jersey Shore rock bands. The love of arts and the lure of books has built a new passion in him, writing. I believe this book was actually released in 2016, if I recall correctly, and I don't know if he's done another one since. Scott enjoys spending time with his wife and 2 daughters and currently resides in the greater Atlanta area. His next writing project is in the works. So, greater Atlanta area, but wait, we're talking about him going missing from close to Cincinnati, Ohio. Basically, he lives in the greater Atlanta area, but he travels to Ohio for work. Because of that, he has an apartment in Ohio. And here is a picture of him with his wife and 2 daughters. Continuing at local12.com, man in Butler County missing after seemingly disappearing from his apartment complex. And I know when it comes to missing persons cases, we use that term a lot. But for this one in particular, when we go looking at the immediate area surrounding this apartment complex, it almost seems like a magic trick. Like, how could this guy, I don't think he could have walked 100 feet in any direction without being picked up by some camera. So that's one of the things I'm really struggling with in terms of this case, is just understanding, okay, if he did plan on disappearing on his own, did he really map that out and think, okay, I've got to get a ride here. I need someone to pick me up. I need them to pick me up at this particular door because I looked around and there's no cameras. Apparently, this apartment complex has several stairway exits. Maybe not all of those have cameras. The only lead police have is surveillance video of Schwarz walking out of his apartment in Liberty Township. He was then seen walking down the stairs and out of his apartment complex at 8:13 p.m. wearing a gray CSI t-shirt and dark-colored jeans. The sheriff's office said it has no leads on his whereabouts. Officers have gone through his cell phone, computer, and financial records, leading to no answers. We don't have anything that points to foul play, said Sergeant Hensley. Everything we have right now is that he walked out of the building sometime on Friday and no one has heard from him. No communication. Schwarz's family lives in Georgia. He splits time between there and Ohio, but police don't believe that he went back to Georgia. All right, so one of the questions that I have here, first in terms of the camera stuff, is they're saying 8:13 is when he was last seen walking out of his apartment complex. And here we see the time code. It is that same footage of him indeed walking out. But there's another clip that has been played in a few places, and that is actually him walking in, wearing the same clothes and heading up these stairs. And that is this footage here. And also, please note the CSI logo on his back here. This is at 8:23. So this can't be the last known footage of him. And, when we're looking at these cases, we're always trying to understand, okay, what's the intent of the person? Where are they headed? Because maybe that's where the trail takes us for the next piece of information that's helpful. If he goes out the door and he goes across to a liquor store, there's going to be more cameras in that liquor store that are going to pick him up. This is strange because everything's being reported that he was last seen sometime around 8:30, and we have him leaving the building at 8:13, 10 minutes later, coming back, heading back up the stairs. So if this is the last known footage of him and he's not in the building, which is one thing I've seen people commenting about, like, hey, they need to be searching the building. Look at the time codes. He came back in. Could he still be in the building somewhere? And I think that's a fair question. Or that point that I made earlier, there's got to be other exits and maybe there's not cameras there. How can this be the last known footage of him and him not be in the building unless we have that condition? There's some form of exit that doesn't have a camera. Even with that, I'm telling you, we'll take a look at the map here in a moment. It's mind-boggling. So he lives in this area called the Liberty Center Apartments. I don't know if the Onyx is just like a subsection of this, but you can see literally if you come out of this, you're on Blake Street here and you just have businesses. We've got Starbucks, we've got a T-Mobile store, we've got restaurants and other businesses all around this. I'm curious about this location because if he did head out and just crossed this crosswalk, like if he walks in front of the T-Mobile store, he's going to get picked up by camera. I'd say also the Starbucks, unless that Starbucks is actually inside, which it might be. It looks like it might not have a storefront that faces, let's jump down on the street and take a look here. Oh no, it does. So if he comes this far this way, he's picked up by one of these businesses in terms of camera. This other thought about him crossing the street here and then going through this looks like it might be parking. Actually, I don't know if that's parking for these businesses and the apartments. It looks like it might be parking for the apartments. It's interesting that there's some that are covered like that. And unless there's underground parking, I don't know where else you would be parking in this area. So perhaps he goes across the street and then through the parking lot. Let me get back to the aerial view here. Because I don't know how many cameras would necessarily be there. You can always count on cameras for these businesses. We've got a mattress store that's over here, more businesses over here. So, if he's trying to go north, west, or east, he's picked up. He's picked up by businesses. If he goes directly south through the parking lot, it's a little bit different. But then you do get to a point where there's more businesses down here. There's a credit union. There's an Outback Steakhouse. A little bit of open land. That's really, whenever I'm looking at these maps, of course, you guys know I'm always looking for water sources. We don't have significant water sources in the immediate area here. The second thing I'm looking for is, sections of land like where there's just a bunch of trees or kind of thick foliage. Looks like there's a little bit of that here. And I don't know if this looks like this is new construction. I don't know if this is still active. This imagery, I don't know, the copyright date on it's 2025, but I don't know if that's when this was actually taken. So by checking out the street views, I was actually able to find newer imagery from that kind of construction area corner. And it looks like it's built out. As of September 2023, this is all new homes now as well. So, of course, we know he goes missing after that. But then you do have this kind of just these thick trees that are wrapping all of that. You do have a little water source over here too that might be worth looking at. This area is really pulling my attention. But if he did head towards that, yeah, he'd still be passing some businesses unless he kind of cuts through this parking lot here, goes straight through another parking garage. I don't know. I don't know how easy that walk would be if he's trying to head over to this area. But if there was any, boots on ground searches or volunteer searches that were happening, this is the area I'm looking at right here. So law enforcement says nothing's pointing to foul play. Basically, they didn't find anything in his apartment that pointed to that. Also worth noting, I don't believe they found his cell phone. And that is kind of how his family catches wind that something isn't right here. Let's look at a post made from his daughter, Victoria. So she was in Peru for a period of time. She says, my plane from Peru landed in Atlanta. Naturally, I texted my parents. Mom was picking me up, and I wanted to tell Dad that there was something arriving in the mail that day for him, a Jaws Lego set, to thank him because he was going to be meeting me in Texas later that week. It was early, about 7 a.m., and I noticed that my texts to Dad were not delivered. I turned my phone off and back on, thinking it was a problem with my phone. My mind went through all of the possibilities of why they went undelivered, but I don't think I even thought about what it actually meant. Mom had spoken to him Friday evening, and he said that he was planning on going into the office in the morning, a typical Saturday for him. As the morning went on and we didn't hear from him, we began to worry. Mom drove up to Ohio that afternoon. I drove up the next day, and Kate arrived from Sweden the day after. At this point, we don't have anything that shows he left in a car with anybody. That's what's weird about it, said Sergeant Ryan Hensley. That is weird, but again, I'm just wondering about how much camera coverage is in that parking lot straight across. The other possibility is if he was picked up. There's these parking spaces right here, kind of. I think this is the main entrance that we're looking at, either on one of these two sides. So could someone have pulled up in a car, pulled over here, and he just got into it and they drove off? That's another possibility that I think needs to be considered. Or did he meet up with someone in this parking lot? I don't think there's a ton of camera coverage that would be there. Another post from his daughter, Victoria. This week has been very painful as we continue the search for my dad. There are no updates. Thank you to my friends and family who have helped search the area, handed out flyers, made phone calls, and provided your support. Thank you to our family and friends from afar. Your unconditional support has meant so much to us at this time. We've appreciated all of your advice and suggestions. We've been working with the detectives to provide any information that might lead us to understand what's going on. We will not stop searching. We love our dad and just want to bring him home. And also a post from his wife, Deanna. Tomorrow, it will be 3 weeks since I talked to Scott. My heart is broken. I can't believe this is happening to my family. We wish we had news, but there is nothing. So in the early coverage, not a ton of detail, information about that last sighting that is not super reliable. There's no explanation for how he came back in, and if he did come back in, how he got back out, which if law enforcement happens to see this, that could be a clarification that could really help the public in terms of helping them. If there is some particular stairway access that doesn't have a camera on it, which street is that facing? That could be helpful information. Is it one of the streets that kicks out towards one set of stores or the other? I can't believe that you have so much commerce in this area. This isn't a rural area where someone, left their home and they're surrounded by woods and rivers and lakes. This isn't that type of case, but the conditions of the disappearance feel like it's supposed to be. It is really, really strange. And of course, that's going to make some people wonder about, did this guy disappear on his own? And there is information that comes out a bit later with some additional details, but I still don't think it's leading me in that particular direction. But let's go ahead and continue with the Journal News here. Where is Butler County businessman who vanished 7 weeks ago after dinner at local restaurant? Dinner at local restaurant. Where is this detail coming from? Why wasn't this released in the first few weeks? Schwarz was last seen around 8:30 August 9th. He was reported missing by his wife 2 days later, which we know about. Basically, the next morning's when they figure out something's up. Family all descends on the area, does their checks, and they're talking to law enforcement on Sunday. Schwarz's Jaguar was left behind in the parking lot, and his cell phone was turned off. Or battery's dead, or it's been damaged, something along those lines. Security cameras show him walking down steps at the complex, and he told a family member at about 8 p.m. August 8th he was going to dinner at a local restaurant. Okay, so what's strange about that is we've now rewound the clock to the night before he went to a local restaurant for dinner. Okay, makes sense. So that's not quite the last sighting. And even the way this is phrased, he vanished 7 weeks after dinner at a local restaurant. Nah, he had dinner the night before. This is still closest to the last sighting of him, but with that giant question of why is he walking back in the building in the actual last sighting. Leftover food from Brio Italian Grill was found on the counter of his apartment, according to the Butler County Sheriff's Office report. I wonder if they can't be trying to roll back the clock. I mean, when you have footage like this, unless, I mean, is there some other thing that's important about that? Are they saying, was there possibly someone that was with him? I don't know. Just if you're curious, I ran a map for that restaurant, Brio Italian Grill. It's a 1 minute walk from the back of the complex. It's literally just right across the street that runs behind the complex, right across Gibson Street. So what's interesting is on Gibson Street, there's actually more businesses back there that are part of this apartment building as well. So more opportunity for cameras. Businesses on both sides of the street. There are some walkways that actually cut through the complex, so he could walk through one of those walkways, and then it's a super short walk. Here's the restaurant right here. But I don't know why this information about dinner from the night before is now coming out. There's not kind of a clear explanation about why that's important. We do hear from another detective at this point. Detective Detherage said, basically, this guy has ghosted. Okay, I would say with that phrasing, the detective's being kind of clear about what he thinks is happening here. He also says, but we have nothing that points to foul play. Detectives have searched the building and area with drones and cadaver dogs, looked through camera footage at the mall, spoke to employees at his Woodlawn business, as well as his attorney, family, and family friends. So we're kind of checking off the things that I was bringing up earlier. You know, if he walked back into the building should be searched. They did search the building. And taking out cadaver dogs, I think, is probably a good move. I'm concerned that there's some type of potential for an accident that happened here. But then we get into new information here from the detective. He has some extracurricular hobbies. Investigation reveals Schwarz has had some addiction issues and possibly some financial issues. He just kind of disappeared, the detective said. From what I gather, Scott is highly intelligent, highly capable, and has a huge knowledge of other countries. So is it possible he just left? Yes. Right now, when you don't have any answers, the sky's the limit on possibilities. And he also noted it's not against the law for an adult to just disappear. So I think the detective is being very clear here. He thinks that there's a possibility that Scott did just take off. That being said, how hard is it to track someone down? Like, you can't just go anywhere, especially if you're not going to be using your passport. That's a really good question to answer too. Is his passport, was that found at home? Does he have his passport on him? Now, there are certain places you can travel without a passport, but those would only be U.S. territories. So you're talking Guam, Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. So could it be that, you travel to one of those places without using your passport and then slip through an easier border there? Also, keep in mind, this is a man that is former military, a man that was in the Navy. Is it a matter of him finding a place where he could purchase a boat or find some type of rental to get himself into a different country? I think we have to stay open to those possibilities because he hasn't been located. I don't know that I'd be leaning on them as kind of my primary thought with this case. Because it does seem like there is a path he could have left the apartment complex from and not been picked up on. And the other thing that I'm actually more compelled by is the addiction issues. Because have we now introduced some type of criminal element that he's interacting with? We don't know what type of addiction that they're talking about. I'm assuming that it's some form of narcotics that might not be legal. And if that's the case, Did he meet up with someone? Was he picking up something from someone? That type of interaction, could that have gone bad in some way? Someone pulls out a gun and says, "Get in the car." That is something I'd be much more focused and concerned about than, oh, he must be in a different country. He's got all this experience with other countries. He's probably just taken off. I think it's especially if using air travel, I think it'd be next to impossible for him to do that without being traced, unless he was using some kind of fake identity or something along those lines. But outside of those other conditions I was talking about, like maybe going to a U.S. controlled area without a passport, even that though, I mean, how are you going to get there? You're still going to likely travel by plane. I just think that form of travel is still going to leave some type of trace. I don't think you can take a plane in the U.S. without it being tracked. So I don't know. It leaves me with just a lot of questions here. I did watch the interviews by Sergeant Ryan Hensley about this case kind of early on, and something stuck out to me. First of all, he's got a bunch of notes up behind him, and in this particular footage, I can read most of them. Now, thankfully, he ran into the same information I did about Scott having another Facebook profile under the last name Black. So just something as a potential alias, if we are talking about someone that ran off, he could be using the last name Black. They have the post here. I think this is a post from his daughter, if I remember correctly. They've got a bunch of the same photos that I've seen of him in different places. But over here on the left is some form of communication, I believe that Hensley is having, or some detective is having, with someone that's reviewing the security camera footage. And there's some additional details here that we didn't know about. He is in the entry vestibule in this photo, waiting for the other person to open the door to get into the building. But it is interesting to note that they're basically saying he wasn't using his card to scan his way into the building. He had to wait for someone else to come into the building, and then he walked in behind them. The message on the right kind of alludes to the same thing, and it also does clarify the times. It is talking about two separate video clips, 8:13 and 8:23, and it's saying he entered back into the building from the main entry. He followed another resident in, didn't use key card. So if they're talking about two separate instances on these messages, that would be 2 times he didn't use his key card for some reason. Why would that be? Either does he not have his keys on him? Or is the key card the kind of thing that you would keep in your wallet and then he doesn't have his wallet on him at some point? Just another small detail in a very difficult to understand situation. Of course, his family is left, trying to support a household. He still has that business that he was running, and they looked for help. They put up a GoFundMe, support the Schwarz family during Scott's disappearance. And this is where I heard the information about them celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary in July of 2024. And then, of course, them being blessed with 2 daughters. So they've raised just over $15,000. We know he still hasn't been found. We know that this family is still trying to figure things out. So on behalf of myself and my amazing supporters, I'm going to make a donation to this just as soon as I'm done filming here today. Some of the more recent comments that have happened from the family, I believe, are on Reddit. It's hard because, there's no identity verification that happens on Reddit. So it could be people that are BSing the public by saying that they're these people, but the comments, they seem in tone to line up with what I read, at least from Victoria in particular. But we have another comment here from someone. He's my neighbor. It's very odd that this hasn't garnered more attention. It just doesn't make sense. I'm kind of surprised by that too, because there's so many giant holes in terms of questions with this case, and it has not hit national level coverage. I think we need like an NBC or a People. We need one of those types of organizations to really help shine the light on this even more, and maybe ask some of those questions and get law enforcement to sit down and answer them. Why do you, if you're saying this is the last footage of him leaving the apartments, why is there this other clip of him walking back in? And then how did he leave? And do we know what time that was? Is there any way for us to estimate that? Is there other forensic information that could be helpful? When did his cell phone get turned off? Who was the last person he was speaking to? Did you identify all communication that was happening between him from that cell phone and whoever? Do we know who all those people are? I know that they're doing that work if they're working this case. It's just in terms of asking the public for help, which they did. They put the Facebook post out. They did the press, the local press, to share the information we do have about this case. I think there's better details that can elicit the type of information that they're looking for that might be more helpful to them. Someone else here, I'm from the area and also can't believe how little attention this has gotten. And I do also want to point out that might be the side effect of a assumption that he just ran off. If the general public believes that, or even, you know, the media companies that are looking at potentially covering it saying, he probably just ran off. Are they going to cover that case, or are they going to cover one of the other cases that we know gets more attention? You know, teenager going missing. In particular, we've talked about it on this channel a lot. Blonde hair, blue-eyed teenage female going missing is certainly going to get more clicks, get more advertising revenue. We know, unfortunately, that's how some of these media organizations run. Thankfully, there's enough local press that has, and thank you, Journal News in particular, but most of the local stations did some form of coverage on this, so I appreciate that. I'm just thinking about what's holding it back from that next bump up. How do you get Crime Online or Nancy Grace? How do you get someone to kind of pick this up and run with it? Because you've got, I mean, even if, let's say he did run off on his own, tell me that isn't a human story that's still going to squeeze at your heart, especially knowing, you know, 2 daughters and a wife of 40 years being left behind in that way. But we don't know that. And, you know, with some of the conditions I'm seeing there, I'm still concerned about accident. If there is an addiction issue, I'm concerned about how that could come into play. Those are in a way different part of my list than, he ran off, he's in another country somewhere. But of course, I can't say that that's not what happened. So the first daughter comment we have here is, "Hi, all, made this account so I could comment. This is Scott's daughter, Kate." So this is the daughter that we haven't really heard from in this video yet. "We have absolutely no clues left to go on. Detectives have done a lot to try to solve this, but are coming up short. Please, please keep sharing, and maybe someone will come forward. We are heartbroken and don't know what to do. Thank you for the support." So please, if you have friends, I'd say in Georgia, in Ohio, but quite honestly, this is one of those cases, if he did run off, he could be anywhere in the US. Please, if you're moved to share this story, share it so we can help this family and maybe bring Scott back home. And if there are other elements at play here, this case really needs the exposure to help with those situations as well. So we have another commenter here, Shytown123. "I worked with Scott at Porex and traveled with him overseas many times. Last time I talked with him was about a year ago. No way did Scott run away. The police are doing a poor job." So this is a friend of his, and he's pointing the finger squarely in one direction. "The mall he disappeared at has more clues. Everyone that serves at restaurants and bars need to be interviewed." I think it's an interesting point. There's got to be, like, even just kind of looking in the way that we did, there's certain parts of that block where you would think that there's cameras and you couldn't walk past them without being picked up by one of those cameras. But now that I've kind of seen both sides, there's a huge area in the front where I think you could walk through and not be picked up on camera. And that little walkway in the back, there might be some angle for you to be able to use that walkway, shoot across the street and not be picked up by anything. It gets a little tougher. You know, the perimeter kind of grows from there. So even if he was picked up by one of those businesses' cameras, what are the odds that law enforcement got to that camera? Quite honestly, this is now another huge challenge in this case. If that footage is incorrect about the last time he was actually in the building, we don't even have the time code right, because that footage is showing him coming back in the building. So then when did he leave? Did he leave at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, midnight, 1 a.m.? We have no idea. So then, even if you do go to all the local businesses, what are you telling them? Hey, we need you to look through 12 hours of footage, because we know that by the next morning when his daughter's trying to reach out to him, his phone's off for some reason. That task of collecting all that footage, going through all that footage when you don't have a time frame really narrowed down like that, I imagine is a huge task. Has law enforcement been doing that? I just don't know. So then we get another reply from Victoria this time, I'm assuming, because again, they had to create an account. Working Sherbert162 left this post saying that it's Victoria. Thank you. Yes, I still believe that my father would not run away. The police are still working on his case, and we haven't given up on him. With the holidays upon us, it's heartbreaking to not have him here. He made everything magical for our family, and all we want is to have him here with us again. It's hard to give continuous updates to family, friends, and strangers when there are no updates to share. This is a daily traumatic experience for all those who were close to him, and each day that we are asked to provide updates digs a deeper claw of grief into an already open wound. The best I can do is ask that this conversation stay open and that people continue to share and spread news of his disappearance. He is still missing. We have not heard from him since August 9th. He has a close family who love him immeasurably and friends who cherish him dearly. His daughter, Victoria. And I just want to make sure that that message is heard too, on the chance, if there's some possibility that, Scott, your eyes happen to fall upon this video, please hear these words from your family members. And even if it is a situation where you are looking to restart for some reason, just go into a local police department and tell them you're this missing person. They can communicate that back to the local PD where your family's at and get the message that you just don't want to be found. And that has to be better than the situation that they're in right now. As painful as you can imagine that could be, or as painful as you can never understand the reality of, that would still be better than them being in this spot of having no idea what has happened and having all those possibilities weighing on them from day to day. So that's another reason why I just wanted to make sure to share these words here. Chi-Town, just 12 days ago, commented again, I'm very surprised Scott has not been located yet. The theory that he left the country is intriguing, but not a simple thing to pull off. There would be a money trail, either from his personal accounts or the business. We know that they've looked at his personal accounts and there's been no withdrawals from ATMs. There's been no credit card charges, nothing of that nature. The business stuff, to me, that's a little bit more of a black box. I think it could be easy, especially if we are, and I'm not saying this is a situation, but if we're thinking about the possibility that he ran off on his own, that we don't know how long he could have been planning that. He could have been siphoning money, moving it into some kind of other account in some way where the linkage to find that account is difficult for investigators. So admittedly, to Chi-Town's point, not a simple thing to pull off, but especially if it had a prolonged period of attention and focus, I think he could have put the money in the spot. And keep in mind, we have the detective saying, well, it seems like there's been some financial issues. Could that have been part of his planning, or a side effect of his planning? Was he kind of leaning too hard into the company finances, pulling money out in that way? And honestly, I don't even know what company that is. Some of the descriptions make it sound like it's actually his company. And then other descriptions kind of make it sound like it's a job that he's working at. So I'm not 100% sure on that. I don't even know what industry it's really in. So he does have a LinkedIn profile, but it's basically a profile that looks like it was created for his book. And it has like 4 connections and really no history. It's all really geared for him being an author. Back to the comment, while he has coworker acquaintances outside America, I would think that they would all contact you via LinkedIn. I think he's replying to Victoria. The records of his activities the day he disappeared suggest to me whatever he was going to do wasn't going to take long and probably meeting someone that he most likely knew. And to that point, again, is why I'm concerned, especially if the addiction issue might have had him dealing with some form of illegal activity, criminal element. That's what I'm concerned about here. So where is Scott Schwarz? Missing from Liberty Township, Ohio since August 9th, 2024. He's 60 years old, a white male standing at 5 feet 9 inches tall, weighing 190 pounds with gray hair, blue eyes, last known to be wearing a gray CSI Miami t-shirt and dark colored, I believe, dark gray jeans. Please take a moment and think, is there someone that I can share this video with? And if you can, please do that. If you don't have anyone to share it with, do me a favor, click the up vote, click the down vote, leave a comment. All of that engagement tells YouTube to serve this video up to more people. We're trying to get it in front of the eyes of someone that has information about this case, and then move that person to pick up the phone and call it in. Of course, we've had a number on the screen for this entire episode. There's more contact details in the description box down below. A big thank you to everyone that supports us here at the Lord and Arts channel. You might have noticed we don't jam these things with commercials. There's one at the beginning and one at the end. We can only do that and make donations like we're making today because of our amazing supporters. A big thank you to PayPal supporters Angela Welch-Sola, Amanda Beard, and Larissa Mertschink. If you'd like to support the channel, please visit lordandarts.com. There you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even just buy us a coffee like Candy Bishop recently did. We really appreciate your support as we look to help so many different families in all kinds of trying situations. I can't believe what this family is facing just in terms of not just the public discourse, but we have a detective basically saying this guy ghosted. I don't know that that's the situation here. Is it possible? Yes. But the pain that that would cause the family, especially not having just some form of message this many months later. Yes, I'm gone. I'm not coming back. I'm sorry. Like that's literally all it would take. But I don't know that that's what we're dealing with here. But what do you think? Let's talk about that in the comments down below. And as always, I ask that we remain respectful. I think there is an extremely high chance that his family is going to see this video. And please know that we are trying to help. I heard your message loud and clear. We don't want to poke at that open wound. It's part of the reason why I didn't actually reach out. I kind of had the inkling to reach out to Victoria, but saw that message. But just know that there's a lot of people out here that care about you and hope that you find answers about where your father is. Take care, everyone. Have a nice weekend, and please join us again next week for another new episode here on the Lord and Arts channel.